All right, welcome everyone. We are so excited to have you come join us today. This is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Roundtable series. And so thank you for coming to join us today. I'm Michelle Beauchamp. I'm your facilitator for today and one of the leaders in Leadership Global Roundtable series. And my other job is that I am the CEO of my company called the Champ Group. And what I do with the Champ Group is I partner with leaders to help them build their people skills so that they can become better leaders of people and help their employees thrive. Other committee members that we have are Denise Cooper and Susan Younger. Susan Younger is a relationship architect, and Susan's going to be checking our chat today. This is really helpful because we're going to ask you to chat some information in, and sometimes we might not even ask you. You might just have a question. And so what Susan's going to do is she's going to monitor the chat, and then she keep us posted about what's going on in chat when people have questions, Casey. So you'll appreciate that. And then Denise Cooper, her company is called Remarkable Leadership Lessons. If you want to learn more about the supportive, trusting community of Leadership Global, designed to help executives like you grow and scale their businesses and improve their impact, reach out to us. In Leadership Global, don't you love that leadership? And Leadership Global, you'll receive support from influential and highly connected business leaders that can help you develop strategies to pursue your purpose and, to be honest, dramatically increase your success. What we do in this DEI Roundtable series is that we are a safe space and safe place to learn, to practice your mastery of the many different aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion. In this monthly series, we'll explore how you can positively impact inclusion, belonging, and collaboration. Your ability to identify and navigate diversity, equity, and inclusion, it allows for innovation, problem solving, and collaboration. And our differences can become a source of power, purpose, and profitability. And when we feel included, we feel heard, we feel seen, and we're open to exploring and creating connections that quite honestly lead to better results. So it's through understanding and dialogue that great things happen. So we're really glad, we really are glad that you're here today. And the topic for this month, as you can see by the slide there, is intersectional solidarity, closing the divide. That's a powerful, powerful title. Our credo at Leadership Global is that during every discussion, we like to consider the positive things that impact our lives and accelerate our success. We have guiding principles, and we want to encourage you to cultivate authentic relationships with women around you. So you know what we can do together? We can rise together. We can rise. We want to encourage you to act with courage, to pursue your purpose, to dedicate yourself fully to the path you choose and the outcome you desire. We want you to be curious and open to be lifetime learners. We want to be able to celebrate each other and build meaningful memories and share the love. And so I want to now introduce you to our speaker of the day, Casey Tonnelly. I had an opportunity to see Casey on a program. It was last year. And I was so impressed. I was just so taken by her authenticity. We're talking about authenticity, her knowledge, and her experience, and how she has been able to take her experience and help it transfer to improve the lives of others. I have been really excited about that. So I said, hey, Casey, I saw you on this other call. I'm on this team with Leadership Global. I would love to invite you to come and be a speaker. And she said, yes. And so here she is. And we've got some people that are excited about you too there, Casey. Sam Marr, can't wait to hear this. All right. Probably somebody that you know. Let me tell you a little bit more about Casey. She is an anti-racist coach, consultant, and public speaker. Casey worked at the city of Seattle for 12 years as a strategic advisor focusing on community engagement, leadership development, and strategic planning, focusing on anti-racism policies, practices, and learning. Casey began her anti-racism training work in 2006. So she's been at this for a while, engaging and working with the community, and soon was thrust into providing anti-profiling training to the Seattle Police Department, which led them to engaging in the city's Race and Social Justice Initiative and the Office of Civil Rights throughout their career. They ended their time at the city working in the Office for Civil Rights and on the Race and Social Justice Initiative strategy team, a dream they thought was never possible. In 2020, we know 2020 brought a lot of change. In 2020, Casey launched her Beyond Thinking to support individuals, groups, and organizations in examining where racism and other biases and oppressions lie in themselves and their organizations. The name of Casey's company says it all: moving beyond intellectual understanding of race and racism, moving beyond good intentions, and moving beyond performative equity actions. So you see, you're in for a treat, and we have people who are super excited. So without further ado, I'm going to let you hear now from Casey Tonnelly. Casey, thank you again so much.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Michelle. Y'all, I gotta tell you, when Michelle reached out to me, like we've kind of touched base over the last year, and the connection has felt immediate, as well as authentic. And we have just been so excited to like share space and have a conversation with y'all in it. And there's going to be times that we're going to really invite you to share in the chat because, like, I will share thoughts, experiences, lessons, but I always think that collective growth and collective learning is the most powerful. And so please, do add in throughout, just because I think that adds to the richness of the dialogue, as well as we don't know, there might be somebody else on this call who needed that message that you put in the chat, right? That's not getting covered by Michelle and me. And so like recognizing that we create braver spaces when more of us are holding that container. And so I just want to invite you to fully engage there. I also just want to say that I use they, them pronouns or no pronouns. Sometimes that's easier for folks, and I really celebrate that. And I was socialized female in my upbringing, and I love to surprise people when I'm like, oh, hey, I did not give up my feminist part. It's right here. It's right here, and it's going to be in your face. And so I just always like to name that too, is that even as I discovered my own identity, it didn't mean that I gave up my solidarity practice with folks who identify as female. So just having that.
That's helpful. Thanks for sharing that, Casey. That's helpful to understand it. And
I also, I just think one of the most important things that we do in this space and conversation like this is a little bit of a check-in. And Michelle, I'd love to actually start by asking you a question, and ask, like, what are you carrying into this space today?
Wow, that's a good question to start with, Casey. Honestly, I'm carrying a lot into this space today because there's so much going on in our country and in our world. The divisiveness. I mean, I love your title, Closing the Divide. The divisiveness really bothers me. I was actually having a conversation with a friend last night, and we both agreed, two Black women, it's worse now than we ever remember. Mm-hmm. And so I carry that with me all the time, to be honest. But I do carry hope. I mean, we have to have hope. So I do carry hope. But honestly, I'm carrying all the divisiveness, all the scary things that are going on in our country. And so I'm looking forward to some ideas that you have for us today. And I love that you checked in with us and asked me that question right now. So thank you for that. That's what I'm carrying. It's a lot, Casey. It's a lot.
I mean, even, Michelle, I just want to acknowledge the fact that like talking about divisiveness and talking about like, I was talking to women who I trust, who have shared identities and experiences to myself. And we feel like this is the worst. That's heavy, right? And I feel like you said it so eloquently. And I do just want to acknowledge and like honor the fact that like that's heavy. That is weight that is on like your shoulders, your friend's shoulders. Like each of us is carrying different weights, but like just the weight of that. And then you're having to show up to the board meeting or facilitate the space or moderate this meeting. And just like recognizing that
Thank you.
you're still doing like you're still showing up, you're still doing this, and you're still carrying this with you. And it's not like you get to turn it off 9 to 5 and 9 to 6.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
that's big. That's big. And I would imagine maybe there's some folks on this call also feeling similarly, uh, who are carrying a weight that often doesn't get discussed. Uh,
And Susan put a note in chat, so we would love to hear from people. What are you carrying today? And it looks like Jennifer said, I know the rise in anti-Semitism is a weight on my shoulders, especially when I'm volunteering for Jewish agencies.
yeah,
So there you go. Thank you,
yeah,
Jennifer. Yeah.
yeah.
See,
No, I really, Jennifer, thank you for bringing that into the space too, right? Because even on this call of, 23 of us, there are so many identities in this space. There's so many things, right? Like there's probably folks carrying invisible disability. There might be somebody who lost a partner recently and is grieving and carrying the weight of loss, right?
mm,
There's so many things in our lives that we're carrying, and that's what people are bringing into the space. The fear that arises both from like I feel like the anti-Semitism uh, movement that is happening in a portion of the country uh, is so mind-boggling in a lot of ways, and it's so ferocious, right?
mhm.
Like when it's coming, it's never subtle. It's not that coded. It's pretty aggressive. Uh, and that's terrifying, right? And like we know when rhetoric is being spoken and language is being spoken, but it's specifically targeting Black and Brown folks, it
Right.
has a tendency to be more coded,
Yeah.
right? Because nobody wants to be seen as a racist, but then they're going to use like dog whistle racism tropes, right? And so it's one of those ways that it's really hard with all of the things that we're doing when we hear like one of those like rhetoric lines or we're hearing the anti-Semitic uh language, actions, behaviors, aggression that's coming out. Uh we have to absorb, right?
Um,
In the
yeah.
midst of like operating our day, taking our kids to daycare,
Mhm.
making sure that our parents are like taking their meds, meeting their doctor's appointments, right? Like all these things are still going on, and we are absorbing major trauma constantly.
We are. Casey, this is I wanted to, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you are here. So Sunny has a really interesting statement here, and I want to share it because I know you'll want to be able to address it. Here's what it says. It says, thanks for the invitation. So first of all, right, it feels great to be asked, right? As a queer parent of a Black non-binary child living in Florida, there's a lot going on around me right now. And internally, I'm facing health challenges. We all have these things running in the background. Yeah. So thank you
Mm-hmm.
for sharing that truth. And Colleen says she's in Florida too. Thank you for sharing.
And I also, it's so interesting, right? I have one of my main collaborators lives in Florida.
Mm,
And then I have a couple of coaching clients that I work with who live in Florida. And like been interesting to hear folks like one of my collaborators who moved there was like, he said, I don't know where to walk my kids. Like
Oh, God.
walking down some blocks and there's like big particular signs or flags or whatever. And then I go to the next one and it's like, we love everybody. And she's like, I don't know what to do. Like, how do I walk, block, or explain this to my kids that on some blocks we're going to feel safer than others? Uh, and like, that is not something I experience. Right. And so I think this is one of the benefits of the intersectionality is because like when you get to hear stories like that, you're like, oh, damn. And like, Sunny, I really appreciate like the amount of things that you just listed in there. And I was like, oh, I hope you have a robust support system
Hmm.
that surrounds you, loves you, and has your back. And reminds you every day that like you were valuable, you were necessary, like, and that you were loved, right? Like, and that you're getting those reminders because it's so heavy to have to navigate all of those different things and then have the responsibility of navigating that for also a young person. Uh, cool. And
And
I'm
you know,
also really impressed with the resistance that is occurring in Florida. Uh,
yeah, okay, yeah. Tell us more about that because I have another comment here I want to share, but tell us more about that, what you were just saying about Florida.
like one of the things I love is that as soon as the 6 week abortion ban went into place, synagogues and they were like, well, this violates our religious practice. Right? So now, like, also, like, what a great effort for people to be like, oh, you're weaponizing your faith system and trying
Hmm.
to, like, project that on others. Well, if you're going to stand behind your religious liberty, so are we, right?
Hmm.
Love that. Um, love that it's rabbis leading it, like and like cis male rabbis leading that as well.
Hmm.
Um, I do wonder sometimes where I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's people of a particular gender that enjoy a particular activity. Where are your voices? Where are your
Hmm.
voices? Um, and so that I think is the other thing. Like when we think about is like some of the best resistance that's occurring are in the small rural areas in red states. Uh,
Hmm.
and and recognizing too that like I can't fret too much. I can celebrate when Kansas has a win, and then they're like, "Oh, we are first to add this to our constitution,"
Yeah.
right? Awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't live there, right? And so when I'm absorbing rhetoric from politicians who are obsessed with money, power, and control, let's just name that. I mean, if we put the amount of funds that we dedicate to elections into community,
Right.
we wouldn't have the problem of people being unhoused. We wouldn't have the
Right.
problem of 33.8 million Americans going to bed hungry each night. We wouldn't have that.
Hmm.
And so I think that's one of the things that, like, in these is like, where is the solidarity opportunities? And are we asking the right questions,
Mm.
right? Versus just like absorbing the issue framing that is getting like bombarded at us. That's just constantly lobbed at us. So please bring in the comment. I'd love to hear what somebody shared.
Um, I know it's funny because we have a lot, and I know you have some other things you want to share. You're so full of information, though, Casey. But this is also on our minds, and this is what Sally Good said. She said, "I lived 20 years in Lahaina, Maui, and all but two of my friends lost everything except their families and the shirt off their backs. Maui is a melting point with all races and bias against mainlanders." So, wow, Sally, wow.
There's so much in there, right? There's so much. I mean, how I was reading a little bit about many of the structures were based in part because it was like the historical architecture, which is like special. And that like whole communities had lived and thrived there, right? Uh, before Hawaii became a state, right? Um, and also like unpacking like what has been the impact of like tourism to the climate, as well as uh, indigenous practices versus like what mainland US has brought there, right? And also like recognizing right now people are hurting.
Yeah.
People are hurting, right? They've lost their homes. But for some people, the idea that people were having to run into the water
Oh,
to stay safe horrified me. It broke my heart, right? Like I was like, oh my God, these are people experiencing the worst moment of their lives.
yes,
Some of them. Some of them are losing their history.
I know it.
Some of them are losing their community. And that like I find that there's this piece too of like all I want to do is shower that community with love. Right. That's like there's going to be a lot that needs to get figured out. And what I want to do is invest love. I want to
Yeah,
invest care, right?
yeah.
Because I worked in emergency management for over a decade. Recovery lasts far longer than the 3 days of news coverage,
Oh,
um,
yeah,
and it's so painful.
yeah,
It's so painful, especially when people go away, right? Especially when the cameras go away,
right.
and all I want to do is be like, "You're going to have some stuff to figure out. How do I shower you with love?"
Exactly. And remembering to do it, like you said, like the camera's gone. And by the way, the truth of the matter is we're under the next urgent matter that's also happening. But, and the point here that I find also troubling too is in addition to all this horrifying that happened as a result of the fire, the statement that the bias against the mainlanders. And I remember watching a show, I think it was on 60 Minutes a year or two ago, which was really eye-opening and showed how committed the mainlanders were to each other. But, I remember making me feel like, you know what? When I went to Hawaii, I don't think I tried to connect with the people who live there. And that's really what it's all about. It's so much about the beauty and the vacation and the resorts. But what about the people who live there? So Sally, I'm glad you posted that. I'm sorry, and it does make my heart break. It really does. That we just have to stop having bias. Oh my goodness, we just have to stop. Do you want to go to your next page or what? Tell me what you want to do
Like
because we got
one No, we gotta there's so much to talk about here, and I will move
okay.
it in just a second. But one thing that I just want to say is like all of us have bias. Everybody has bias.
Yep.
And that's not saying like it's intentional, right? Like
No,
I'm not saying that, but I know
it's real.
that the way marketing works, right?
Oh
And that's
yeah.
the same way a lot of like culture gets established is like, why is it that I can remember like, right? Or like, whenever I think of a V8, I like to try to walk like I'm actually going sideways, right? Because those were the commercials in the 80s.
Mm.
And that was the first impression, and that was the absorption I was getting, right? And so, like, recognizing part of this is like, arguments over like what is taught in school right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, y'all, I am turning 45 in 2 months. And I got to tell you, I feel like I am still having to relearn and unlearn and re-educate myself off of what I learned in, kindergarten through college. And like, that annoys me, right? It annoys me that I like went to school for as long as I did, came to school as much as I did. And I actually am like, wait, what? There's all this stuff I did not know that would have set me up better to interact with people. Uh, and so I think that that's really interesting. And I think one of the things that's really hard, especially when we're in a go, go, go kind of world, everyone has a deadline, everyone has like
Yeah.
20,000 responsibilities, nothing
Right.
to do, is that doesn't give us a time to exhale. It
Right.
doesn't give us a time to rest and reflect. Reflection has been the best tool for me and has made it possible for me to connect across differences, right? Um, when I look and I'm like, what was I taught about the indigenous communities of like where I was growing up?
Mm-hmm.
I learned that they were very happy about Thanksgiving, and that it was like a lovely event. Uh, and then I was like 20 when I learned maybe that's not true. And then I was 24 when I was like, oh no, that's not the whole story. Uh, and I am still, still, I'm still like having to learn, not just about like the indigenous lands that I'm on, also about the communities that were impacted by colonization, right? Like I'm still learning that versus the paragraph I got in primary school that
Oh,
said
for
everything was
sure.
complete.
Right. The
Um,
paragraph, maybe. Yeah, maybe you got a paragraph, right? Yeah.
and so like this one acknowledge how challenging it is when we are hustle, 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 not getting rest, totally depleted, also like craving and like wanting to learn, wanting to understand, but then being like, what do I do? And I just like want to say that one of the best things is the reflection
Hmm.
and taking pause, right?
Yeah, and
Uh,
let me ask you about that because that's so
yep,
true. I've actually been mindful about that. In the mornings, out of my window, I can see mountains, further over there, and it makes me think, where am I? I'm in the top, or am I in the valley, or am I in the top? But just makes you reflect. So, what kind of guidelines, what ideas do you have for us? Then I have another important statement here in chat to share with you too. But uh, how have you made time? What have you done to make time to reflect? Do you write in a journal? What is it that you do to reflect?
it's an evolution, right? I feel like when I first started, I was like showing up to caucus. I'm going to the training. uh, and like it started there. Uh, and then as I started building deeper relationships across difference, I found that all I wanted to do was like listen and absorb and truly absorb and let them have them feel me
Mm,
absorbing your words. Uh,
mm,
and then like also I think there was this piece for me where I was like, I had to ask permission. I was like, oh, I'm reflecting on this. Like, would you want to hear from me? And some people were like, yeah, I do. I want to hear your reflections. And other folks were like, no, I don't. You go learn on your own. Uh, and I found that like when you engage with people through like a consent-based practice, um,
mm, mm,
that it can be much easier, right? And I don't take it personally. I think and that constant work. I do want to like acknowledge that that's constant work of like, it's not anybody's responsibility to help me to get to an embodiment place. Uh, some people choose to support it and invest in that, and I am grateful. And
mhm,
others are like, no, I got a line there. This is already enough. Uh,
mm,
I can respect that. Um, so I think that like one of the things on this slide that I wanted to point it out is like, and I would really invite everybody to add into that chat, like, what does solidarity mean to you? But also, what does it look like for you? Because I think what we're going to get is a very robust list of a variety of ideas, that there is no one way.
mhm.
Uh, sorry.
So, do you want people to put in chat what they feel like it means to them? I mean, because I love the question, what does it mean to you? And using your voice to amplify. But one thing you said too that's so important was listening. So when somebody else is using their voice to amplify, what I heard you say is we can't just say yeah, and nod and keep going. We have to really listen. And you said absorb, right? So that they can feel.
And the general rule that I will share, like that I think has really supported me is when people with any lived identity, right? Um, because I also want to just name that all of it, like almost everybody's under attack, right? Right? Almost everybody's under attack. And
Mm,
the power, like when we are divided, they benefit. The people trying to actually implement harm benefit, and they don't got to do anything because they're like, good, we're going to get you to fight amongst each other. And I
mm-hmm,
think that one of the things that I think about is um, I was an unhoused young person. And there's a lot of cities struggling with the increase in unhoused people.
mm-hmm,
And a lot of the questions I hear are, what are you going to do about homelessness? You're going to clean this up. Why are people becoming unhoused? Right? Like, I want to know that question. Because are
yeah,
you the same folks that voted for the eviction moratorium to end?
mm-hmm,
Like, let's connect some of these
right,
dots. And I think that there's this piece too of, I mentioned like 33.8 million people go to bed hungry.
Yeah.
We have like over 700 billionaires in this country.
Yeah.
What is that? And so I think that there's this piece like we have to be discerning of messages that like politicians are using or rhetoric that politicians are using because it is meant to split us. And I think that one of the things that's really powerful is like when somebody with a lived identity speaks and shares their truth and their story, I listen, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, I trust, and I follow, right? Because I always think that like people who have never experienced being unhoused or any connection to people who are unhoused should not be trying to come up with the solutions,
Right.
right? It's an entirely different culture. And I think that that's one of the things is like we have this like mainstream kind of culture of American culture and then various like subcultures that are all underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know. And I think that there's this piece of, and I know that there could be like, oh, but when do I listen? When do I speak up? Like it gets clear. I get that. And I think that one of the things is when it's new to you, I think you lean into that listening. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can't do anything else, acknowledge and validate,
Mm-hmm.
right? That piece of like, wow, I didn't know. And I
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate you sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to sit with that for a while. Um,
Mm-hmm. I like that.
you know,
Listen,
and that
acknowledge, and validate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's something to kind of like when people, I just think about the excruciating emotional weight of like, what's already like been shared in this space. And that like to then be speaking and trying and using your voice to elevate an issue and to have silence be met with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like instead to be able to turn around and being like, whoa, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing?
Yeah.
Is there something you need? Like, uh, and it like I know it sounds so baseline, but it can be easier. And I think that am I allowed to use a cuss word? How are folks feeling?
Yeah. I see
Great.
nods. I see nods. So I say yes.
Okay. In the United States, one of the things that like we are socialized and conditioned for is perfection. And so we have a major fear of fucking up, right? We like do not want to make a mistake. We're like, I don't want to cause harm. I don't want to do this. I don't want to get wrong. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to be known as this person. I don't want to get fired. I want people to still work with me. So about like all of the fear, 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 fear. Uh, and this is the thing. We're gonna make mistakes because we're human. And guess what? None of us know everything.
No.
Uh, and like, I think that there's this piece of like, when I make mistakes, and I'll tell y'all, I keep a fuck up list. Uh, I'm like, what happened? Who is involved? Uh, what do I need to absorb from this? How do I shift that behavior? And I think that one of the things I think about is when I make a mistake, if I upset, I own it. Um, if my relationship is there, I like make an amends and then I shift my behavior and move on. Uh, and that builds trust.
Yes.
Uh, and
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that that's one of the things that I've learned is that like how I respond to mistakes or when
Mm-hmm.
I step in it, it's like
Mm-hmm.
the things that's far more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I'll tell you, like two of my main collaborators, like I know when feedback is coming. I know it, right? Like
Yeah.
one of them would be like, yes, 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 yes.
And you're
And I'm like,
willing to
here
hear
it
it.
is.
You're willing to
Here it
hear
is.
it, is what I hear too, Casey. You're willing to hear
Yep.
that feedback. Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, the truth is, I don't want to cause harm, right? Like someone I don't. And
Right.
so if I do, like, and no, no, wrong, I can go down a rabbit hole. Shame lives thoroughly in this mind. Uh, and that piece around like, oh, you and another vulnerable step is offering me that. I want to do you the respect of
Mm-hmm.
absorbing it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then changing my behavior. Uh, and I think that there's this piece too of like, we get so afraid, it stops us. and
There
that
you
like
go. Mm-hmm.
there's power in unity, right? There's power in solidarity. I think
Mm-hmm.
about like everyone, like Black people are being attacked in a variety of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Brown people are being attacked in a variety of ways. Women are being attacked. I mean, I am watching what's going down in Israel, and I was like, oh, please do
Yeah.
not tell me this is something that we're going to have to worry about in like 2 years.
Mm,
Uh, queer people are being attacked. Like, who's not? And like,
right.
if we come together, powerful. And it might be like, you know what, we're going to have something to talk about. We got some things to still figure out. But like, if I can stand up for you and you can stand up for me, we're standing up to the power that is trying to suppress us all.
Right. You have a lot of comments in here, so let me share some. See, Casey, you are stirring it up, which we need and love. So, Sam said, I found so much solidarity just being in and creating spaces for people of different experiences to come together and share stories.
Yeah.
It's so expansive and a lot to process sometimes, but hearing stories directly builds so much connection. To your point, you said that with people I never would have expected to have so much in common with. So thank you, Sam. Right? Yeah, yeah. Just taking the time to let people talk and listen, and the whole solidarity. If we didn't create that space that you've created, Sam, then you wouldn't have known. You're right, how much you had in common with. So the ability to establish the common ground, the common out, and figure out that we have a lot in common, right? What a concept to figure out that we do have things in common.
So like, let's even like with the wonderful folks who are like visible and invisible in this space today, right? By like camera on, camera off. Uh, how many folks want to feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
right? How many folks want to feel like, oh, I can keep my kids safe. Oh, I can keep, my family fed. Uh, when we look at that, like, I want to feel connected. I want to
Right,
feel seen. I
right,
want to feel valued. Uh,
right,
you know, that's something we can also like give to each other, right? And it's something all of us are, um, and I think that piece too of, I'm at a conference right now, and I was like, I always set intentions for a conference because I'm like, oh God, so many people, so much anxiety, and I always stick out and it's going to be horrible. And I like set my intentions.
mm,
And I was like, connect with two people.
okay.
Be brave, do it. Go out there and connect with two people. I have connected probably with 50. Uh,
You
and I was,
overachiever, you.
well, I was like, I'm going to do something different this time. I'm going to let all of my authenticity be present. And that's going to be my litmus. Uh, and I know
Awesome.
some of you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, where you're like, how much of me can show up in this space? Like, where do I get to exist? Um, and I
Mm-hmm.
showed up fully. Does that
There you
mean
go.
everyone's a good match for me? Uh, does that mean uh, that I can't still value who that human is, value what they're trying to bring to the world, celebrate pieces that like really are aligned. Conversations about the rest. Uh,
You know, there's a comment in here that totally connects with what you're talking about. It's from Colleen, our new CEO with Leadership Global. She said, for me, solidarity is being vulnerable. When I share, I see others share, and that's movement. And by you saying I'm going to meet two people and you connected with 50, what I hear you saying is that you really allowed yourself to be vulnerable. So
mhm.
good for you. Very true.
I mean, I am still deep breathing a lot throughout the day, right? And then hiding in the bathroom and being like, doing it. Like that push feels really important. And I think, one of the things, like everybody in this space, I'm just going to make an assumption, is trying to do good in the world. right? Like is trying to have an impact, is trying to make a difference. And also when you are, yeah, it's hard work. And the thing that actually can bolster us and make us stronger is when we're doing it cooperatively. And I will tell you, one of the things I love about intersectional solidarity is that when I'm in a training or a facilitated conversation and someone's like, I can't use they, them pronouns because I'm a Christian. First of all, logic makes no sense to me and I don't know what to do. Uh, but when my collaborator, who is not, queer or like, have like has a like binary cisgender identity, is like Christian, I actually find it pretty easy to use Casey's pronouns so that they can feel respected in this space. Whoa, right? Or if somebody is pushing back against one of my collaborators, usually on something related to like race, because I think bootstrap mission and being good has been something that's been so indoctrinated in us, it's hard to untangle. Um, and so when somebody's like, I worked hard, I love that one. I'm like, yeah, I was unhoused from 17 to 22. I was working like so many jobs trying to get myself through school. It's horrible. I had to work my ass off. You know what? When I finally got stable housing and I started volunteering in an art center for young folks who were unhoused or at risk of being unhoused, saw a real difference about how the kids of color were being treated
Mm,
and what services were being offered to them and what kind of compassion was being offered or
mm,
judgment, right? Like, well, why'd they leave? No,
mm.
for me to know. All I know is this young person's on the street by themselves, trying to
Right.
figure it out, trying to survive. And you know what? Most of these young folks, we ran away from something so terrible most adults can't comprehend.
Mm,
Um, and that, like, they're so vulnerable. And so I think that, like, I got this moment of getting to see, like, here are these young, talented, amazing, brilliant minds and artists who are being given up on by the time they're like 15.
mm.
And that for me was like, oh, there's a difference. Like, hell yes, I had to work hard. Oh, anybody who didn't have to work hard to some degree. And there's different barriers and opportunities and benefits of the doubt based off various identities. Uh, and I think that that was one of the things for me that was so profound. And when I say that,
Yeah.
white folks in that space will be like, and they're less likely to push back
Mm,
directly against the woman of color who named it to begin with. Uh, and that is how, like, that's kind of how we get to do that, right? Is being like, they're coming for you. I'm gonna step in and take this one. Oh, they're coming for me. Would you? Uh, and and I gotta tell you, like, you gotta start. Yes, start like the person who you're closest with, building that relationship, and be like, can we practice? And they give me feedback, right? And how'd this go? But I think the other thing is I always ask people. I have collaborators I've been working with for like close to 20 years. And every time we're about to hop on a call where we're facilitating or holding a space, I'm like, what are your expectations for how I show up today?
wow. See,
And
go ahead.
no, no, no. And just saying that, like, the answer changes
Yeah.
depending on the day.
Yeah. You know what? So a couple things. Let me remind everybody, because I see Colleen did it. Put your where you're calling in from, right? Where are you calling in from? And put your LinkedIn information in there so that people can be connected. This is such a powerful group. And the participants here, the audience today is so powerful and so curious and so full of knowledge and information. So be sure and go and put your information in there so we can all connect. Um, I just want to thank you right now, Casey, because first of all, when I did hear you last year, and then when you and I talked and you told me you had been unhoused for that period of time, I was so impressed. Wow, you know that Casey, this person has so much power, so much tenacity, so much integrity. And so I just want to thank you because you are strong. You are a strong person. I just remember being in awe of you when we first talked. And I do want to thank you because you said you noticed that there was a difference the way the young people of color were treated compared to the others. And you, total allyship, total example of being an ally, speaking up, stepping in for people. You did that. And I just want to stop right there and say thank you because that you're very courageous. That's the other. I could come up with a lot of adjectives, a lot of superpowers that you have, but courageous is another one.
Well, and I often think of like 17-year-old Casey, right? Where I'm like, whoa, how do I get that fire back? Because I also have done so much healing that like I'm no longer hard, right? Like now I'm kind of this big softy and like I'm very tender. My partner could tell you that I cry when I see flecks of kindness. It's because I'm so moved by it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the things that I have a commitment to humanity, and I have a commitment to like growth, and I have a commitment to honoring, what people want for themselves. And I think that there's this piece of oftentimes it takes a lot of pressure off when you're like, oh, I think the responsibility I'm supposed to have is not responsibility, right? Like, I'm not going to convert everybody. I'm not going to change everybody's mind. I mean, wow, that would be like, I would love that magical power. I'd be like, healing touch, healing touch. But I think that, like, when I realized, like, oh, all I need to do is, like, if I see somebody coming for you, center you and have your back.
Yeah.
Easy. And then move forward. Because I think that this is always the thing is like we gear up. We're like, all right, that was, you know, ableist, sexist, homophobic, like, when we gear up and we like come in with that energy, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes it does require a firm hand. More often than not, I feel like a call-in can be so subtle, people don't even know what's happening.
Say that again. Tell us what you mean by call in.
Oh, and so, I mean, I feel like that piece around, like I was sharing the example of like when I'm facilitating, is if I hear somebody pushing back against like my colleague of color after they've just shared, the definition of racism, and somebody pushes back with like, I can't be racist because I worked hard. I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps. When I go in and I share my experience, I'm like, well, we all had to work hard. Who here didn't work hard to get where they are? Right? I love asking that question. Because no one's like, I really skated through life. Nobody says that. Even people who do, right? And like, I think that that's one of the things. It's like when you're like, so everybody's worked hard.
Right.
Everybody's worked hard. What we're saying is sometimes there's resources that we have that bolster us, right? Like it is known that when kids go to bed or wake up hungry, they have a harder time focusing, they have a harder time learning. And when that happens in early learning, it actually affects their ability to learn for the rest of their academic experience. And
Yeah.
that is something that we know. And so like recognizing like when you're like, how many people in this space had breakfast every day? You don't even have to answer, just like think it to yourself. Right? And people are like, oh God, I always had breakfast.
Right.
You wouldn't even think of that as an advantage, but set you up. And I feel like that piece is just like really important to highlight. But when I get to step in and share it, that also means they're no longer going for my partner. They're no longer going for my co-facilitator.
Yeah.
Now we're engaged.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's like when you have identities of privilege, because I mean, every person on this call has both, has privileges and ways that you're oppressed in our society. Right. And so what I think of is in the ways that I have more privilege, it's my area to lean in. Uh, that's my opportunity
There
to
you
step
go.
up. That's my
Yeah.
opportunity to engage.
Yeah.
And with my trusted partners, I also get to turn around and being like, um, I've heard it 7 times this week that my identity's not real. Can you handle those questions? Power, right? That's power. That is the thing is like, I feel too harmed. I no longer have space to be gracious. Can you please handle that?
Yeah.
That's solidarity, right?
Yeah.
And I think that those pieces, oh yeah. Ugh. And that people get triggered around words, 1,000%. And I love to dissect that. Why? Why is that word hard, right? Because people are like the term white supremacy. Can we say white dominance? What is the difference between dominance and supremacy? Like break that the definition difference down for me. And it's like, well, one word feels more palatable. And I always think of like, we have to lean away from the palatable, not
Right.
into it.
Right.
Um, and uh, and again, I also think that like people with lived identities who are experiencing the harm of that form of oppression get to this type of language uh, and terminology, right? And so I
Right.
always think that like if you hear something that approaches you, I'm always like, well, why?
Right.
Like, why is that hard?
And you're
Uh,
breaking it down. You're asking questions because guess what? You're trying to understand it, right? Um, so I'm looking at the clock. We only have a few more minutes left, and I wanna bring up a couple of other notes I see in chat. One is from Kim. So on the same subject, I think people associate the word privilege with white privilege. You can have ability, economic, gender, religious privilege, etc.
But this is why I was like, please stay active in the chat, right? Because like looking at this robust amount
Yeah,
of like context, information, experiences, thoughts, comments, like this is a topic that could be discussed for like weeks. Um, and so I love that like this is so active because I also think that there's no one way. There's no one way to do it. It's going to be different for different folks. What's comfortable for me might not be comfortable for somebody else. And
yeah,
so figuring out our authentic styles. I am a very short human, right? I am 5 foot. I finally made it to like 120 pounds, which I'm thrilled about.
Oh
Uh,
gosh, oh gosh, Casey.
like, like, so imagine baby Casey, who was like 27 in the police department,
Oh
quirkier than
yeah.
I am now, right?
Yeah,
And I was
small,
90 pounds soaking wet, five
small
foot,
but mighty.
and I'm like, oh, come on, right? And so I think about like, how do I use certain things to my advantage? People
Right, right.
underestimate me all the time. Thank you for that gift. Right? Like I know it. I know when people see me and they're like, oh, you're short and you're quirky looking, and we don't know what to make with this whole gender thing that you're doing. Uh, like I recognize being like, okay, like you're struggling to see me. Great. Okay, now I have a new way of kind of getting in there. Um, I also feel like it's one of the reasons I get to say really hard things, is
Mm,
because I'm open. I'm pretty flexible. Uh, it can be really disarming for folks. And I can say really hard things, but in part because my physical stature is not,
there
and
you
no
go.
one's prepared for the thunderstorm that's going to come out, right? Like nobody
Ooh,
is
ooh,
prepared for that.
thunderstorm.
Mhm.
I love it. Now, so we have about 5 more minutes. Let me see if we have any people that want to unmute and ask any questions to give people an opportunity. We really
Or
do want to thank
share.
everybody. It's been so open and engaging. But yeah, questions, thoughts, share. Let's just go ahead and unmute and let's open it up and hear your thoughts.
I'll go ahead. I've posted about all the different kinds of privilege. So I just threw a link in the chat. It's from BuzzFeed, so take it for what it's worth. But it does give you like 100 different things to consider. Like I've never had to worry about making rent. I graduated from high school. Various different things to consider to get like a privilege score. So it's just different things to consider.
Okay, here I see that you put this in chat. I hadn't seen it. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot to discuss, right? So thanks, Kim. Yeah, thank you. And let's see, Colleen, you said, okay, Colleen's talking about the value of leadership global. Here's something from Lisa. At the Waffle House, talking with the girls, having a conversation, complaining about having to pay back our college student loans, made the statement, I feel the need to apologize to you guys. College was originally free. They made it a pay system to keep Blacks out. Expectation was to be giggled at. Although I had to let the air out of the room, they immediately changed this topic. Dang, really? Where's Lisa? Lisa. Hey, Lisa, can you unmute real quick and tell us more about what you felt with that?
Well, pretty much everything that you guys have already said. Hello, how's everybody? Lisa from Pensacola. I want to have a comfortable conversation about my differences with everybody. I'm okay with the fact that I am, and unfortunately these are differences. I am Black, I am female, I am a business owner, I identify as she, and I'm a Christian, which happens to now be a thing. Why are they things? Why is me just being me not enough? Because I'm cute, I'm funny, I'm fun to be around, all those things too. Did you miss all of that looking to identify me?
Yeah.
Because my identity is who I am, not what you're concerned about as to what I'm a part of. I'm just, I like me. There's value in just me.
Oh, you're like, what are people missing out on by not allowing the full you to be present?
Line up! Line up! Everybody line up! We're about to race!
I'm sorry.
Everybody line up!
Sorry.
I was like, let's go pre-K. So like, I feel like that piece of like feeling through this, right? Like I feel there's like a bubble, there's an energy that's like percolating when this piece of like, what are people missing out on because they refuse to see your full self? And I think that like all of us have been conditioned. First of all, let's be real. Dimensions of diversities are categories. Categories were created primarily by men that kind of box us and make these identities. No dimension of diversity is a monolith, right? Because we're going to have people who like could be Black, queer, disabled, taking care of living in an intergenerational household and taking care of like both, like young folks and elders. That's not one, that's a complexity of things. And so like recognizing there is no demographic of diversity or category of people that is a monolith. And I think that when we do that, we just lose so much. And I think it helps to divide us and not see all the ways we're interconnected.
Yeah.
So I think that like why do strangers feel the need to sometimes come up and say things and contribute in general? Like unless you're adding value, go away.
Totally.
And then having this feeling certain, not talking about it. But I think that there's this piece of how many times do you have to cover a part of yourself in the day? And that's for everybody, right? Like if somebody comes over to the house, the moment you're stepping into like your Zoom call, like we mask up. We mask up and we armor up. And I think that like what that means is that we have to hide. We have to hide parts of ourselves. And like how much power, and y'all, I'm still working through this myself, right? So these now it's not like I'm like the full practice of mine. I struggle. And I think that piece of like when I'm hiding, not the impact to others, like yes, they are missing out. When I'm hiding, how much am I hurting myself? Right? Even when I'm having to do it for survival.
You know what? Can you believe it? We're out of time. I mean,
Yeah.
this conversation, so Casey, I knew you were going to bring it when I saw you on that other call last year. And so, and you know what, you sure did. So just want to thank you so much for opening up our minds and our hearts and really giving us the space as we intend to do with this roundtable to be safe and to be open and to be honest and to be transparent. Thank you so much. There's so many other comments in chat that we could have also gotten to, but we want to be respectful for everybody's time because we are supposed to be over at 11 and it's 11:01. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I just want to say that we really want to thank you all for coming today. We meet every third Thursday. So the next time we meet is September the 14th at the same time, 10 o'clock Pacific time. So we would love for you to make this a habit. And next month, I'm speaking about hidden diversity. So that's the topic next month. So happy that you all came. Really want to thank you. And again, Casey, thank you.